Hi, my name is Matt Baker, and this is the Jiu-Jitsu Lab Series 1, Science of the Sitting Guard. The following DVD you're about to see is a scientific breakdown of the sitting guard, which is one of the most misunderstood guards. What we've done is we put together a series of techniques that are designed to help people no matter what skill level they are. So if you're a beginner, we start off slow, so this is something that will definitely improve your game. If you're advanced, there's techniques that go further down, so that way those of you that want to be pushed to a quicker pace, those techniques are for you. So the idea, though, that we have is to come up with a solution for whatever your opponent may be doing to you while you're training or in competition. So if your opponent ends up putting pressure and crushes you, there's an answer for that. If they end up standing up while you're playing sitting guard, there's an answer for that. If they go to the left, they go to the right, there's something for you to do. That's the beginning of the DVD. For those of you that want to be challenged again once more, there's more techniques in the intermediate and advanced section for you to follow. So once again, thank you for watching, and welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu Lab. Okay, the first technique that we're going over is a basic sitting guard sweep. Now, before I start, what I want to remind everybody is that there is a difference between sitting guard and butterfly guard. Now, butterfly guard, at least that's the way it was taught to me many years ago, your legs are actually in this position right here, where you have your knees out. And what we want to do with sitting guard is we actually want to have one dominant knee. This knee right here is going to be very instrumental in a lot of the techniques that you see in helping you from getting crushed. We don't want our opponent to put more pressure on us than we need. Okay, so from this point my knee stays up. I also have my hips back, my head is forward, and I use this arm as what I call a kickstand. So your arm that's free is either going to be pulling your opponent in most of the time, or you're going to be overhooking, underhooking, grabbing the collar some cases. So that'll be the beginning of pretty much every transition that you do. Now from here, in a regular sitting guard position, I have my right leg low, my left leg is making contact with Jason's chest. I have my head forward. The big reason why I have my head forward is because if Jason wants to put pressure, all right, this helps me sit up. The more my head goes back, the easier it is for him to pressure me. Next thing you know, I'm flat on my back and I'm having to work on, defending a pass, or I get stuck in half guard. So, back from the beginning here. Head forward, hips back, knee making contact with the chest. Now, my hand, if I grab real tight, that lets Jason know that I'm trying to sweep in this direction. So, what I try to do is I just keep my hand rested here. And when the time comes for me to go for the sweep, I'm just palming his hand, palming his forearm. If I need to, then I'll grab. But oftentimes, you can actually just get the sweep by just delaying their hand from posting out. I'm going to be moving his body this direction with my knee, my arm, and a little bit of my foot. And this hand right here is just going to delay his arm from posting. The end result is most of the time they fall to the side. So let's give it a shot. Here I fall, I'm just palming. I have this hook, I have my knee and my left foot. I roll through and I get a top position. And this is a regular sitting guard sweep. All right, for the next technique, this is coming off of the sitting guard. One of the common things that your opponent does, they back away. Whenever your opponent backs away, it makes it really hard for you to try to get the movement that you need to take them to the side. So from here, I have my regular sitting guard. Like always, I have my kickstand here, I have my hook, my hips back, my head's forward. Jason does something pretty creative. He just decides to posture up. So when he postures up, if you'll notice, that's already creating a problem. I'm not even making contact with my knee against his chest. So oftentimes the adjustment that starts to open up more opportunities has to do with your hips. So in this case, I'm going to move my hip a little bit to the side, the same side of the arm that I'm actually underhooking. When I have this adjustment, it gives me the opportunity to bring my arm up. I'm bringing my arm up from grabbing around his back to actually going over the shoulder. My next step is to gable my hands together. When I gable my hands together, I'm going to make a slight twist. Now from here, my shin is pushing. Okay, my knee is no longer making contact with the chest, it's actually out. And I have my shin against Jason's hip. So from here, gable, twist, and push with your shin. And that creates pressure on the shoulder. Another thing that you can do as well, if they posture up a little bit, and you're allowed to, or you're able to, you put your foot on the hip. When you put your foot on the hip, that'll help you push their body away while you're torquing on the shoulder. Now, this is a shoulder lock, and it will create a submission. Just like the omoplata, whenever people try to get out of the omoplata, they roll forward. This also will help your first technique happen. So he defended the sitting guard, okay, by making an adjustment and posturing back. Now that I have the shoulder, and I'm creating pressure on the shoulder, oftentimes what will happen, even with the arm posting out, as you turn and you continue to put the pressure, you'll be able to get the sweep. The reason why that happens is because the only way to relieve the pressure off the shoulder is to roll forward. So the end result, you have your sweep again. And that's a sitting guard to shoulder lock sweep. Okay, the next technique in this series has to do with your opponent backing away from you. Now normally with sitting guard, there's no gi required. You know, a lot of times you're just relying on overhooks and underhooks. But if you have someone that's stronger than you and they're actually pulling away from you and you're not really able to get a good strong underhook type of control, oftentimes the lapel or the collar is what we're going to rely on. So in this case, I'm back to sitting guard. And for this technique, we have Mr. Nick Ross helping out. Now, all the moves that I start out, I'm always going one direction. I mean, we switch, we go back and forth, right and left, but the whole point is I start out in this position right here where I'm trying to go to one side. Now, what Ross is going to do from here is he's going to back away. Now, when he backs away, I want to continue to try to get close to him. And as we start this process, he backs away some more. Okay. The end result is I can't control him. So instead of having this underhook, I'm going to let go of the underhook and I'm going to reach for the collar. Now, this choke that we're doing right now is very common. A lot of people do it, but a couple of details that make it more effective that I found out the hard way. This part of your thumb needs to be making contact with the neck. Now, oftentimes when your opponent's backing away, they give you an angle, a real good angle to reach for this area of their gi. If they don't, if you end up, in front of them still, then like we have in the past, adjust your hip. My hand that I use as a kickstand, as fast as I can, I want to reach up and I want to grab right where the shoulder patch is. When I grab where the shoulder patch is, I bring in and I want to go ear to ear or cheek to cheek. Once I do that, I'm putting my weight. I'm trying to rest my head on top of Ross's head. Squeeze the elbows like you're doing a pull-up. It's not this so much, it's more like the same way you're doing a pull-up, okay? Or a chin-up. And that's what creates the choke from here, okay? This is a regular cross choke from sitting guard, one of the oldest moves in the book, but the little details are what make a big difference whenever you're going against more advanced players. Okay, for the next technique in this series, we're going over still when your opponent's backing away from you and you aren't able to control him. So what we've done in the past with other techniques is instead of trying to grab around your opponent's lower back, we're actually using the lapel. And what we're going to do on top of that, on top of grabbing the collar, the lapel, is we're going to talk about another form of control that's very important. Okay, now look, if you see the pant leg, when I hold here, I have both of my feet inside. But when I have this grip right here, that limits Ross from going to his right. He still eventually will go there, especially if your opponent's stronger than you, but you're slowing him down. So you have your arm, and you have this grip right here on the outside pant leg. Now, when you put both of those together, that gives you a chance to get your, your thought process going. So that's one valuable thing for you to do. Now, like we talked about, where the cross collar grab comes into play, when you secure your opponent's body, the only thing that you don't have control over is their upper body. So in this case, Ross is going to actually back away from me. He's going to posture away. Now, when he does that, my hand goes from grabbing around the back, I go back to grabbing the collar like we did for the cross choke. Now, my goal from here is to pull down, okay? I pull down, and the reason why is because I actually want Ross to pull away from me. You want your opponent to think you want them to go towards you. The end result is they back away. Now, when they back away, because you have your hips back, that space they give you allows your leg to come back. When your leg comes back, you now push on their neck, and then you lift up on the leg. The end result is you tip them over. Now, once you've done this, drive forward with your knee, or get to a standing position, so that way they can't come back on top of you. This is what we call a forward rally. Okay, the next technique in the series once again has to do with your opponent backing away and you have the collar control. We also are still using the grip on the outside of the pant leg. Now from here, it's always good to play with your opponent's reactions, okay? So I'm grabbing here as Ross backs away. I try to pull him in. And then as he backs away again, this time I'm going to use that opportunity because that process we have, we want our opponent to think we're pulling them in, but after you do it a couple times, then go ahead and get close to them. Tuck yourself underneath. Try to get as close as you can to them. Now from here, what I'm doing is I'm pulling while I lift with my legs. 1, 2, 3, pull, lift, and continue to hold on. I want to continue to hold on to the grips of my opponent's leg and his collar. I use that to pull myself up. When I land, I want to land with my knee on the stomach to keep the pressure and also keep my opponent pinned. This is a pizza toss from a cross collar choke. Okay, the next technique in this series is also from the sitting guard position. So, regular sitting guard position. Where we're at right now, we've tried a regular sitting guard, we've implemented a shoulder lock. Now, when we had the shoulder lock, it's very similar to an omoplata. So, and that's where we're going to go from this position as well. When I'm here, the biggest thing that made the opportunity was the fact that I adjusted my hips back. When I adjust my hips back, they give me a chance to gable. Gable lock my hands and apply pressure on Jason's shoulder. Now, from here, Jason's no longer posturing back. What ends up happening is your opponent starts to pull away from you. They start trying to make distance going that direction. Now, what happens with this situation is, as they're backing away, your leg becomes less effective pushing on their shin. So what I end up doing, I'm still going to turn, but as Jason starts to pull away, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the gable and I'm going to get my leg out and throw it over his back. My intention is to get my ankle my ankle needs to make contact with his ear. So once I have my leg over, I put my ankle against Jason's ear, release the arm, and sit up like I'm trying to go for an omoplata. Now, when I'm trying to go for the omoplata, this is a very hard move to get. It's pretty common for people to roll, or they try to hold on to their belt, or they just try to, just wiggle their arm out. I'm actually going to let this arm go. All right, I'm going to loosen up by hipping out. Release the arm, but then I jump on top. When I jump on top, I already have my first important arm. I have my underhook arm. Now I want my over. And once I have my over and under, I'm sitting on Jason's right leg. I'm actually going to switch and put my knee underneath and then pull. I pull Jason on top. My first hook is already beginning. My second hook, make the adjustment, and now you have your opponent's back. The next technique in the series has to do with what your opponent oftentimes does first. They actually put their weight on the opposite direction of where you're trying to sweep them. So in this case, with Jason, I'm trying to sweep him to my right. So what he does to defend this is he puts all his weight on his right side, anchors himself to my left. That makes him twice as hard to lift. It's like adding an extra 50 pounds, on your opponent. So what we're going to do to make this work, the movement that I need to use my arm to extend Jason's right arm, and I'm going to use my shin to push and extend his right leg. So the end result is I want his right side to be stretched out. So from here, all right, the way I'm going to have my arm most effective is I'm going to slide my arm towards his elbow, and then I hook. And I'm hooking like I still want to go this direction. Now, the next thing is my shin needs to extend. I'm pushing on his leg. So now his right arm and his right leg are both stretched out. Now I still have my right foot here. I'm going to use my hand and my right foot to steer Jason and lift and follow through. The end result is I end up with a sweep and a mount. The cool thing about this position is because you're so close to your opponent and there's such contact, you don't end up in side control. You end up with an extra position. You end up with a mount position. So, all right. This is a reverse sweep from sitting guard. Okay, these next series of techniques have to do with if your opponent takes away your underhook. From sitting guard, most of the time you're relying on an underhook to move your opponent. But if you're going against someone with a wrestling background or just someone who's got more experience in jiu-jitsu, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll take your underhook away. You end up with no hook at all. But there's still an answer for that. One of the options that we're going to go for is a common submission based on an overhook. So if you'll notice here, I have regular sitting guard. Like I mentioned before at the beginning, I have my hips back, I have my head forward. This arm is waiting. If it needs a grab, cool. If it doesn't, I just rest here. Okay, I use it to help keep me up. All right, I have my left knee still making contact with Jason's chest. Now, what ends up happening is Jason's right arm, he's going to try to put his hand inside and take my underhook away. Now, I can continue to try to relay my hand back in and get this to get this underhook again, but then most likely your opponent's going to do the same thing. Okay, so from here you're going to deal with this overhook, all right, instead of continuing the fight. What I do is I'm going to move my chest a little bit forward, or my shoulder a little bit forward to be more exact, and I'm going to underhook the arm. Now the reason why I'm putting my shoulder forward is because that allows me to get closer and get a bigger lock on Jason's right arm. Now I have an overhook here. Now, as mentioned before, sometimes the options that you can create with sitting guard have to do with your hips moving forward or backward. In this case, once again, I'm going to move to the side. Now, when I move to the side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually grab Jason's wrist and start getting space to get my foot on Jason's hip. As I'm pushing his hip away, I'm pushing Jason's body away, but I still have this lock on his arm. Now, if you can, put both feet on the hips and push away. Most of the time your opponent is concerned about you going for an arm lock or a straight arm, but I'm actually going to throw my leg over the shoulder. When I throw my leg over the shoulder, my hand that's an overhook immediately grabs my shin. I clamp down and then I put my triangle lock in. So regular triangle choke, but from an overhook. Squeeze, compress. And this is a triangle from an overhook. Okay, the next technique in this series has to do once again with your opponent taking away your underhook. So it's really common in sitting guard for your opponent to try to take the underhook away. So what you oftentimes have to do is just deal with an overhook, but realize when they put their arm inside, they commit their arm. So they actually give you an opportunity to grab the belt easier. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the regular sitting guard sweep that we first did. Realize most of the time the easy way people defend sitting guard is they put their weight on the opposite side. Now, grabbing the belt, that actually gives you an easier opportunity to get a sweep on your opponent because you can lift from the back part of their body. So here we are. In sitting guard, Jason takes away my underhook once again. So now I have an overhook. Like most sitting guard positions, your opportunities open up when you adjust your hips. So I adjust my hip to my side. Now my arm can much easier grab Jason's belt. My hand grabs the back. I also bring my body closer because I'm going to try to scoot in and try to, roll underneath Jason a little bit better. Now, I'm going to control the arm a little bit more this time than normal. I fall to my side, and now I'm using my hand to pick up while I lift with my left leg. The end result is you get your sweep. Now, once you have the sweep, because your opponent has this underhook, make sure and put your pressure on their neck. Use your forearm to stabilize your opponent. That'll help keep your opponent down because most of the time with that underhook they try to lift up and it creates a flurry. Putting your forearm here will help you follow through and stabilize your opponent so you can further secure your top position. And this is a sitting guard sweep using the belt. Okay, the next technique in this series has to do once again with the overhook. Before, what we did was we went for a triangle choke from an overhook position. Now there's actually a submission that's before that that's even easier to do. So once again, back in sitting guard. Alright, Jason being smart, he actually took away my underhook. He put his arm inside. Now, my shoulder goes close to the chest. The reason why is because I want to get a high overhook. I want my arm, whenever I have an overhook, I want my arm to be underneath Jason's armpit if possible. The higher, the better. It's going to give you more control of your opponent's arm. Now the next step is I'm going to adjust my hip a little bit. When I adjust my hip back, now my right foot goes on his hip. Push away a little bit. Now the left foot goes on the hip. Now it's real common for your opponent in this whole process to be trying to pull the arm in. But if you'll notice, because you have a high overhook, and you also point your hands up, that gives you a lot of control of the arm, and it makes it almost impossible for them to get their arm back. So from here, The last adjustment is to square my hips while I'm on both sides. The end result, push away with your feet and lift up with your arm. Very sharp control, very sharp submission. Okay, on to the next series. Another problem that oftentimes happens from sitting guard is when your opponent pops one knee up. So whenever they pop one knee up, their intention most of the time is to put pressure forward and to try to put all their weight on top of you. So for this example right here, I have Damon, and I'm going to start in regular sitting guard position again. Now, like we talked about earlier, my knee needs to be against Damon's chest. Okay, I want my knee to be making contact with his chest. That'll make it a little bit more challenging for him to put me flat on my back. The next thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to keep my hips back and my head forward. Now, from this position, when I'm here, that's when the leg pops up. So Damon has his right leg come up. Now, like always in sitting guard, adjusting your hip is very important. Going forward, backward, sideways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hips back again. And then the next step is to bring my left leg on the outside of Damon's right leg. Scoot back in. As soon as I scoot back in, my arm immediately goes underneath. I reach under Damon's right leg and I want to grab his lapel. The higher, the better. The final step for me to do is just to pop up on my knee, drive forward, and push. This is a reach under sweep from sitting guard. Okay, for the next technique in the series has to do once again with your opponent popping their leg up from your sitting guard. So in this case, Damon's going to use his right leg and he's going to pop it up again. This time we're going to go for a leg lock. Now as you'll notice, Damon's right leg is up and I'm in regular sitting guard. What I'm going to do, instead of adjusting my hips back, I'm actually going to scoot in. I want to scoot in and I want to pull Damon on top of me. Now, Damon's right leg is resting on my shin bone. The left shin bone is directly under Damon's right leg. Now what I'm going to do from here is I want to lift up and I want to place Damon's right leg, his foot, on the outside of my right hip. The end result is I do a figure four and I bear hug his legs. The submission comes from you squeezing the hip as you push your knee away. And this is a 661 leg lock. Once again, the next technique in this series has to do with the reach under, and for this technique, Damon once again pops up his right leg. Now when he pops up his right leg, realize you have to make an adjustment, moving your hips back, putting your leg outside, and then scooting in. Now as soon as you scoot in, your left arm immediately has to go and grab. And again, the higher, the better. Now, instead of trying to stand up from here or even go to my knees, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rely on this grip that I have on Damon's shoulder. And like sitting guard sweep, we normally use our feet to hook and lift. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lift up with my right foot. My left foot is out. I don't have any use of my left foot. but my right foot is still underneath. So I pull and I lift. As I pull and lift, I just follow through. Get a top position. Go ahead and release the grip of the lapel and use your hand to push down on the leg. The end result is you have your top position. This is a sweep with a reach under control. Okay, a new series and a new technique. This time we're dealing with the problem of your opponent standing up. So when you're in sitting guard and your opponent stands up, this can be a big problem for you because they're creating space and they're creating distance, and they also have gravity on their side. So the first thing that we need to do from this situation is try to get close to them, try to close the distance so that way we don't get pummeled or get compressed as they drive forward. For this case we have Ian, and what's going to happen here is I'm in regular sitting guard. Now, I have my hips back, my head forward, I have both feet in, I'm good to go. Ian's smart, he decides to stand up. Okay, now if you'll notice, as he stands up, he's already creating space, and he's got a knee that's, it's ready to drive forward. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my leg on the outside, and I'm gonna scoot in, and put my chest against his knee. It's very important that you're close. If you're like this, no good. This space gives them a chance to drive their knee forward. Get an angle and start working a baseball pass. I want to keep my chest and my shoulder making contact with the knee. Now, my outside arm, just realize it's always the outside arm, it wraps around. When you have your outside arm wrapped around, now you control and you're bear hugging their leg. My inside leg wraps around this way. So you have circular control. You have one arm wrapping around going this direction, one leg wrapped around going this direction. This provides universal control of your opponent's leg. The easiest thing to do from this point, your outside leg goes back and you push forward against their knee. Here, push, and this is a single leg takedown that you get. Now, if you'll notice, my leg is hooked around Ian's ankle. So this really stabilizes his leg as I drive forward. As I drive forward, I'm keeping pressure with my shoulder. I release the grip with my arm and the leg and follow through to get side control. This is a single leg takedown from the koala guard. Okay, the next technique in the series, once again, has to do with koala guard, when our opponent stands up in our sitting guard. So, remember, koala guard has to do with your inside leg wrapping around and your outside arm wrapping around. Now, like we mentioned before, it's important that there's no space between your opponent's knee and your chest. When they have distance there, just a little bit, that's all they need, they can put their knee and drive it forward, and the end result is they end up making you fall on your back. So beat them to the punch. Make sure that your chest is pushing on their knee. Not a lot, just enough to stop them from moving. Now, once you establish this, it's real common for them to start pushing on your head. When they push on your head, okay, what we don't want to happen is we don't want your opponent to push your head towards the mat, because that creates distance again. If you'll notice, put your foot right there. When Ian starts to push on my head, if it goes away, there's that space that we talked about with the knee. That's no good. So what I like to do, when my opponent starts to push on my head, I'll bring my head to my knee. All they want to do is make your head go away. They want to separate your head from your arm. We'll just push. When they push, make your head go to your knee. And what that does is it brings a hand in range for you to grab. So now my outside arm grabs Ian's right wrist. My legs are wrapped around his right leg. So I have complete control of his right side of his body. Now, the next step is I'm going to fall underneath. Now, the type of move that I want to do from here, it's a circular movement. I want the shoulder of my right arm to land right here. While that's happening, as I fall to my side, I'm going to use my left arm to pull. So the end result is a whipping combination where I actually make my opponent fall to their side. 1, 2, 3, here we go, pull. There. As Ian falls, I still have control of the right arm and the right leg. Now I follow through and keep control. This is like a rope that you hold, and it limits your opponent's movement. If you push here or you push here, you end up stabilizing your opponent. And this is what we call a side sweep from koala guard. Okay, the next technique in the series, once again, is from koala guard, where your opponent stands up in your sitting guard. So this is just a slight variation from the technique we've done previously. Now, if you'll notice, my right leg, once again, grabs tight. My outside arm, inside leg, outside arm. That's always the case. Now, from here, your opponent, once again, is going to push on your head. Bring your head towards your knee. Once you have your outside arm grabbing their wrist, that's where the control begins. So what we normally did was we fall this way and we turn. This time it's actually a lot easier. Because I'm controlling the entire right side, I'm just going to use my shoulder to push and go this direction. Make sure to hold on to the arm. Alright, so we push and pinch our knees the whole time. The end result is we roll our opponent over, and we also have an excellent opportunity to pass into side control. This is a regular takedown from koala guard. Alright, the next sub that we're doing is another grapevine attack. What we're going to do is we're going to throw several different sub attempts at our opponent. But this move is good for both gi and no gi because we're not relying on any particular grips. So I'm going to start from sitting guard here. Now, whenever you have sitting guard, the first thing you should be trying to do is sweep your opponent, get a reversal. If you aren't able to do that, I'm adjusting my hips, and now I'm attacking the arm. Okay? So as I fall to the side to get either a Kimura or a straight arm, if I don't get this up from here, I want to make sure again I control the wrist. My hand now goes over the back and I grab the armpit. Now I throw my leg over, lift my hips up, and hook my foot on the outside leg. The next step is to hip back while you're hooking. Okay, now Ian's back is lined up with my chest. I let go of this and I go straight for the rear naked choke to finish the fight. Now in real time, but before we start, it is important with these grapevine attacks that you don't rush. So you want to go fast, but at the same time you don't want to rush because you might be giving up key opportunities to finish your opponent. So I start here, sweep. The next submission we're going into now is from sitting guard again. We're going to go back to sitting guard like we have previously, But we're going to do an arm attack that's not the most common one. So from here, when you have sitting guard, you should always be trying to get the sweep. But if you don't get the sweep, there's a number of submissions you can go to. So in this case, I'm going for a regular straight arm submission here. I want to make sure that my head is close right off the bat as I fall back here. Now, when you go for this move, it's not uncommon for your opponent's hand to slip in front of you. When that happens, you're not going to be able to get a straight arm anymore. It's very important that my left arm is holding tight. My left arm is pinching to keep control and not lose the whole move altogether. And my right arm now becomes my kickstand. And this enables me to get my hips off of the mat. Now, before my opponent sits up too much, I want to throw my leg in front of his face. Once I have my leg in front of his face, I pinch my knees, then I put my stomach towards the mat for the arm bar. This is a sitting guard to a belly down arm bar. Now here's a move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going to go over is what I call submission grapevine. Now, the reason why we do this is because our goal is to throw a bunch of techniques at our opponent. So if they survive one, then we're off to the next one. And then the next one, then hopefully one of them will stick. So I'm going to go back to a regular open guard and a triangle. Triangle is always a good move. In this case, though, Ian actually defends it by putting his head up. I'm keeping both sleeve control at this point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my leg that was normally going for the triangle to drop down and hook Ian's leg. Now, one thing important, I'm never going to let go of that grip. Now my next step is to adjust my hips a little bit, put my foot inside, and get to a sitting position. My next move is an underhook, and I'll go for a straight arm. Now, when I go for a straight arm, as I fall back, if I'm not able to tap my opponent out from here, I want to make sure that I at least capture the wrist, and I hold the wrist. I'm using my elbow to help sit up, while I'm still continuing to hold the grip on my right hand. Now my leg goes over, I lift up, so that way I can hook my foot on the opposite side of Ian's leg again. My next step is to hip back while I hook. Now, because I never let go of this grip, my leg is over his arm again. This gives me a chance to go back to the triangle. Lock up the triangle, pull, and cause your opponent to tap. Now in real time. Okay, the next submission we're going for is a leg attack. Once again, we're doing more of a no-gi approach, and we're going to start from sitting guard because most people aren't expecting you to attack their legs from sitting guard. So here we are from regular sitting guard, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition from sitting guard into X guard. I fall to my side, pull Freddy on top of me. Now, if I can go and get X guard and then push and go for a sweep, then go for it. But if you can't, most of the time your opponent's going to pull back on top of you. Now from here, I grab the ankle, lift up, and transition to 661. If I can get a sub here, then good. If not, push using this leg control to knock your opponent over. Sit up with them, switch the arm, grab the toes, get a toe hold, bring it to the back, and finish with a toe hold submission. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into is actually an escape from your opponent trying to pass your guard. Okay, so in sitting guard, or for that matter, any guard, what ends up happening is your opponent bear hugs your legs. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're trying to keep your legs out of commission where you can't use them, and they're either going to go to the left or they're going to go to the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my head to the side. And I want to bring my arm in. I'm grapevining my arm until my hand can reach outside. I want my hand to go on the outside of Freddy's shin. Now, if they're putting pressure forward, this move's easier. But if they're just staying stationary, it works the same. You just pop your knees up a little bit and then you lift to the side. Their hands are committed to your legs, so they don't have a post. As you knock them over to the side, well, you tip them over and now you have a top position. Now here's the part where we counter with a sub, all right? As he falls over, my legs go back a little bit. I'm going to let go of this leg here, wrap around, and then drive forward and finish with a Kimura. And this is how we get the Kimura off of their guard pass attempt. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, off to the next submission. Now, guard. Okay, as soon as people get past closed guard, the next guard they usually try to play is open guard. So we're going to do a triangle choke from open guard. What I'm starting off with is I have both sleeve control. I'm using a C-clamp. I have both feet on the hips. Now it's important that I keep my feet on the hips because that's what helps me lift my bottom off the mat and also move my hips from right to left. The next step is to put the foot to the shoulder. Now, if you try to go for a triangle from here, it's real common because it's obvious for people to back away from it. They pull back. So what I'm going to do to be a little bit more tricky is I'm going to actually pull on this arm and I'm going to use my leg in a crescent kick type motion. So I go to the side a little bit, I pull on the arm. Now my foot rests on the opposite shoulder and then I bring my foot to the mat. Because I put my foot to the mat while I'm pulling on the arm, my leg is forcing Freddy's head to the side. As soon as my foot hits, I bounce my leg back and I capture a triangle. I'm moving my leg all the way to the other side. Then lock up the triangle. Okay? The whole point is catching them off guard with that kicking motion. Here's what the move looks like in real time. Okay, the next submission that we're doing, we're trying to put more than one move together, so that way if one move doesn't work out, you're immediately going into another one. Before I get into this next move, because it is a more advanced move, I want to go over an important type of hip adjustment you need to do. So, when you're starting out, it's very important that you have the ability to get your body sideways. Okay? I'm not using my hands, it's my hips doing it. This leg's pushing, this leg's swinging. Okay, this is a basic move in jiu-jitsu, but it's going to open up so many different things that you do when you get further up, you know, in your belts and your skill level. So this is what we'll take it now. Now I'm in open guard. All right, my feet are on the hips. Now I'm moving around. My opponent decides to stand up. Now here's the deal. I want to keep control and I want to keep close. Ian's going to start trying to put distance into the picture. As he backs away, it's bad for me to continue to let my legs straighten out. So I sit up and then I pull myself in. When I pull myself in, I'm using my arms. I still have the sleeve control here. My feet are still touching the hips. Now I can lift up. When I have Ian up in the air, I already have an opportunity to sweep just by adjusting my legs, letting one of them drop. Controlling the wrists and the sleeves and moving will also help you steer your opponent one way or the other. Okay, so right off the bat, that's the first thing that we can do by lifting our opponent up. But we're going to take it a little bit further. We're going to go for an arm bar from here. So once again, Ian's backing up a little bit. I sit up, and then I pull myself underneath. Pop Ian up. Now I'm going to push and go let him fall to the side for the arm. Now I haven't let go of the sleeves the whole time. I allowed him to go a little bit to the side, and I let my leg go over his head while I'm controlling the arms. Here's a move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into is a submission off of a sweep. Now, the first thing we're doing is we're getting a sweep on our opponent, but oftentimes they try to pop back up in order, to prevent us from getting credit for it if it's a tournament. So we're going to use that opportunity to get them into a triangle choke. Now, from here, I have regular open guard. I put my foot to the shoulder, and then I go for an extended scissor. Now, from here, this is already 2 points. It's already a reversal. But your opponent oftentimes will try to come up on top of you. Now as they're coming up, you slide your foot over. I have control of the sleeve here. So this is my goal. My goal is as they're coming up, I want to hip into it. Let my leg clamp down and then throw the triangle choke. Now, the beneficial thing about this transition is that most of the time when people do triangle chokes, one of the reasons why they're weak has to do with the angle of the triangle. But because you did it off of a sweep, when your opponent pops back up, they actually have a perfect angle that they give you to lock the triangle choke from here. So pull down on the knees, the finish is right there. This is an extended scissor to a triangle choke. Here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into is a sweep from a triangle choke attempt. So sometimes when you go for a triangle choke, your opponent backs away. This basically gives you an alternative to throw them off with a sweep. So what I'm going to do from here, all right, I have the sleeve control. I have one knee inside. I throw my foot up to the shoulder, and I'm trying to go for the triangle here. What ends up happening is your opponent postures back. So bring your leg down, and what you need to do is you need to put your foot underneath their leg. Now once you have this, you need to sit up and adjust your hip. Now the whole thing is you have control of the arm here, so if you fall to the side, you should be able to lift and get a top position from here. And then once you have this amount, there's a lot of options you can go from here. This is a grapevine sweep from a triangle choke attempt. Now here's the move in real time. The next move we're going for is another option from Open Guard, and what we're trying to do is basically just throw a little bit of confusion into the game. Go for things that aren't quite what people are expecting. So from here, I'm back in Open Guard with Jill. Now when you put your foot on the shoulder, most of the time they're thinking sweep or they're thinking triangle. That's the first thing. So I'm going to let my foot go over. As I pull, I want to actually bring my leg down and hook underneath the leg. Now, my foot being underneath the leg, that helps me sit up. Now, I'm going to underhook her arm and pull. Now, I'm going to let go of this grip. I'm no longer needing it anymore, and I just turn this into a straight arm submission. Turn your body if you need to. That makes more pressure on the arm as well. Now, here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into, once again, is from Open Guard. It's from the bicep crunch control. So everybody comes up with names for their own moves. This one we've nicknamed Gatami, but it's very similar to an omoplata. So I'm going to start an Open Guard first. And now I have the sleeve control here. It's important that your hips are relaxed and able to move. Now what I do is I put my foot, my left foot, right in the middle of Ian's stomach. Now my leg then goes over, and that's where the bicep crunch type control that we have starts. Now, it's very common when you put your shin across their stomach instead of your foot that your opponent wants to start pushing your knee. Now, right here, we'll do this slowly, but as they start to push, you want your hand to follow their hand. And then your fingers go out. The back of my hand is now cupping Ian's side. Now, as Ian gets closer to me, I want to switch and make sure the palm of my hand is now going to be able to push. I push as I spin underneath. Now immediately, once I get to the side here, I want to sit up fast. Go ahead and let go of the grip and get to your knee. You want to be facing the opposite direction of your opponent. Now, here's where the submission is. You're entangling your leg with their arm, so it's unhinging their arm as you're facing this direction. And then you apply a little bit of a pressure here, your hips forward, and that's what causes the omoplata type finish, and this is what we call the Gatami. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next submission once again is from Open Guard, but it's a more advanced Open Guard. It's inverted guard. And we're going to go back to a triangle choke. Once again, the first thing I do is I start off with sleeve control. Very important that you have sleeve control whenever you're playing Open Guard. If you don't, they're going to control your legs. So I have my C-clamps here, both feet on the hips. I'm going to start with my foot on the shoulder again. But this is obvious for a lot of people, so you're going to have to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to let go of this grip, switch my hands. Now normally this is bad to have my foot here and have his arm free, because he would control my leg. Freddie would control my leg. But the reason why this is okay is because we immediately grab the pant leg on this side, and then pulling here, shifting my foot to the armpit, I actually roll to my shoulders. So once again, let me explain this one more time. I have this grip, it's a cross grip here. I have a grip on the pants. My foot goes to the armpit, and now I kick and roll to my shoulders. All right, now I'm going to be pulling with this arm while I'm pushing on the armpit with my foot, and I continue holding on to his leg with my left hand. As I pull Freddie towards me, I start to bring my leg over the shoulder, and then immediately I clamp down for the triangle. Now I can let go of the knee, grab my own shin, and lock up the triangle. Squeeze, and there's the move. Now, let's do it one more time in real time. Okay, the next technique we're going into is inverted guard. But what we're going to do with this move is we're going to go for a transition that's not normally expected from inverted guard. So let's get back to this grip here. All right, I start off grabbing both sleeves. Now open the guard up. Make the space necessary to put both feet on the hips. Now, as we talked about earlier, I switch the grips. Grab the knee and immediately get to inverted guard. Now what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to keep my foot more closer to Freddy's hip. I don't want it high on the armpit. I want it actually lower, so that way I'm pushing on his body more. Now I'm going to gradually start pushing myself or sliding myself back in. Now the next step is to make sure while I pull myself up, my foot goes in the middle. Now as I pull here, I hop up on my knee. What I ended up doing is I end up taking the back from inverted guard. This is a situation that they're most likely not expecting, and it's a great way to get the best position and finish the fight. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into is a basic armbar submission, but what happens is when people first start training, they oftentimes go for armbars from guard. And unfortunately, your opponent, their immediate reaction is to stack you so you can't extend your legs. So what we're going to do is a belly down armbar from here. Now the way this works, when you're first going for your opponent's arm, grab the sleeve, underhook the leg, swing around, throw your leg over. Okay, now the whole point of this is you're controlling their head while you're pushing away to extend your legs. But when you do this, that's when your opponent starts to stack you. Now, from here, when they're stacking you, the arm that you have underhooking the leg, it goes out, grabs the outside of the ribs, and now from here, as they start to put pressure, you spin around. You spin around, go to your stomach, and then finish the arm with your face down. Now here's the move in real time. The next move we're doing is another sitting guard move. Now, as you're playing sitting guard, especially in no-gi, a lot of times wrestlers will do a whizzer on your arm. The arm that you have is an underhook. You do this arm lock movement to try to limit the control you have with your underhook. So from here, what I'm doing is I'm going to put my leg on the outside, and I'm going to adjust and switch my hips. It's important that I switch my hips. If I need to, I bump a little bit, so that way I can get my knee to go behind Ian's hip. Now, the next step is a real small one. My left arm is now pinching the whizzer control that Ian has with his right arm. Once I have a good control, I fall to my shoulder and I use that arm that I trap to get a reversal. Now from here, the next thing that you do, you already have 2 points, but with the arm control that you have from the whizzer, you spin around and it gives you an opportunity to take the arm as well. So this is a reverse sweep to an arm bar with the whizzer control. Now here's the move in real time. Once you have your jiu-jitsu experience down, or you've learned your fundamentals and your transitions, the next part is to learn how to finish a fight. That's the fun part, the submission part. Not everybody's a guard player, so the submission that we're going to go over right now is actually one from when you're on top of somebody. So I have Mr. Sam Campanella helping me out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from side control, a position we call forklift. I have one arm under the neck, one arm under the legs. Now, right off the bat, if I try to do an arm attack on Sam, or your opponent for that matter, if you try to do an attack on your opponent when they're fresh, trying to pull their arms away from their body is just very hard to do, because they know that you want to go for their arms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from a forklift position and I'm going to use pressure to soften up my opponent. Knee on stomach is one of the best ways of doing it. Aside from knee on stomach, what I'm doing also with my hand is I'm putting this part of my hand against the neck. I'm going to put pressure with my hand on the neck and keep heavy on the stomach with my knee, or my shin to be exact. My reason for doing this is because after a while, just being patient, eventually your opponent will start to push back. So that's when Sam gets frustrated, his hand goes against my chest. The first thing I need to do is put the hand behind my head. Nothing happens until his hand is behind my head. Once his hand's behind my head, it requires me to drop a little bit. I grab his arm, I'm hooking here. Now my hand transfers to the mat. I bring my knee where my hand is, pick up slightly, put my foot underneath, pinch. This is the first submission that we have from this position that we're going over. We're going to do 2 though, because a lot of times, if you can't get the arm, what ends up happening is they start moving their body away. When you see their legs go to that point, it's just a matter of seconds before, or half a second before they get their knees to the mat, and then they're putting pressure on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my hand, grab the wrist with the hand that was normally hooking at the beginning, then I grab my wrist and I put his hand behind his back and switch to the Kimura. Because he went for the armbar escape, it gave me a perfect opportunity to go for the Kimura. Kimura here, armbar here. Once again, the knee starts moving, he goes parallel, switch, and Kimura. Okay, 2 attacks work great together. And here's a submission in real time. Okay, the next sub that we're doing is actually from a top position. Not everybody is comfortable playing guard when they first start out, so we're going to do a move for the top players. Okay, we're going to start from side control. Once again, Sam. Whenever you have somebody who's really good at defending, again, if they're stronger than you, especially, you have to trick them into giving up an arm. So from here, what I'm doing is I start in regular forklift. I'm going to put my arm over Sam's head, and whenever you try to go for a position change, you start making your opponent think about different parts of the move. Now, normally, if I just was trying to get points, I would bring my knee all the way across and then try to position myself for a mount. But I want to go for a submission here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my knee over real sloppy. I'm not going to really try to get the mount. I'm going to bait him with this. So I throw my leg over, and it's a natural reaction for them to clamp down because they have half guard now, and this is a position people sometimes try to maneuver and get sweeps from. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to make him move his arm. I'm in half guard. Now the focus isn't so much defending the arms, it's now defending me passing his guard and getting to a mount. From a tournament point of view, if I get a pass, I get points for the pass and the mount. So it's actually a double score. So they're not going to let that happen. When I push on his leg and I start trying to get my knee through, his hand drops. That was the bait. That's what I wanted him to go for. Now I grab the wrist and I put my elbow. I don't want to go strength for strength. Remember, my opponent's stronger than me. So I grab his wrist and I tuck my elbow inside against my ribs or my waist. Now I push with my body. This is my frame right here. This is what's allowing me to get Sam's arm to the mat. Whenever he tries to pull his arm back, it's stuck. It's stuck because I'm using my elbow against my ribs and my hip. Now I go back and then I put my elbow against his hip. So I have the arm isolated. And here's my attack options. If my arm goes underneath here, there's a Kimura. If he starts to pull his arm away, then I go for a straight arm. Those are going to be the two first moves that you go for. And when you're going for the Kimura, try to get your hand or your arm, your forearm, to go by his elbow. If you have your forearm, if it's even possible, depending on the size of their arm, if you have your forearm up high by their armpit, the pressure is no longer on the elbow, it's on the shoulder. And the problem with a Kimura when you're attacking the shoulder is you have to give them space to get the hand behind the back. So a Kimura with the pressure focusing more on the elbow, I can actually get to submission without even really having to give them any space or get light at all. And the straight arm ends up being a lot more closer. It's a much smaller adjustment. Now the next step, if I lose my grip and he starts to pull his hand towards his head, I do the exact same thing. My elbow is touching his ear. My hand now catches his wrist on this side. So now he tries to pull his hand again. It's not strength, it's my forearm framing. Now this hand goes underneath for the shoulder lock. Americana, paintbrush, whatever you want to call it. Lift up on the elbow, bring the wrist down, and that's a submission as well. This is a triple jeopardy move. 3 moves will work. We start out in regular side control forklift. We throw the fake mount attempt, and then we bait this arm, getting it to move by acting like we want. We want to get the pass to mount. Always remember the frame, and that's how you overcome a stronger opponent. Okay, the next technique we're going into is an attack from a mount position, but one of the most important things that oftentimes is neglected is creating an angle from a mount. So if you get a mount position, you stay straight with your opponent, it's not too hard for them to roll you over and reverse you. So for this technique I have Mr. Rudy Rosario here, and I'm going to maintain a mount position that's maybe scoot us this way. So after I maintain or gain a mount position, What I want to do, most of the time your opponent, they're going to have their arms protected. They keep their arms in tight. That gives me an opportunity to get one leg up. So I want to have one leg go high. When I have one leg go high, my other leg turns into a kickstand. Now the easiest way to make an angle to a diagonal mount, an S mount, or a hurdle mount, those are different names that it's referred to. I turn my heel, and as I turn my heel, I bring my heel behind my opponent's shoulder. So now I have my leg trapping Rudy's arm on this side. This arm right here is the one I'm going to be attacking. My hand will help me move to get my hips a little bit higher up. Now, the next step is to scoop the arm. Okay, once you have this arm, trapped, you have a lot of options you can go for from here. The first one we're going to try, the hand goes to the mat, I bring my head this direction, I throw the leg over, and then I apply the arm lock with my face and my stomach down. You don't have to go very far. Your hips and your weight, as they drop forward, that creates a really tight pressure on your opponent's arm, causing them to tap. This is an arm bar facing down, or oftentimes called a belly down arm bar. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move is another attack from a mount position. So once again, Rudy, on your back. Yeah. Okay, this is after we already have the mount. So, the hard part of getting the mount is already passed. Now what do we do from here? Again, as we talked about earlier, we don't want to stay straight with our opponent because that's one of the easier ways to get reversed. So one knee is going to go high. As my opponent keeps his arms here, as Rudy keeps his arms tight to try to avoid, getting choked or getting any attack put on him, that gives me an opportunity to bring one leg high. I want one leg to go high, and remember, this is your kickstand leg. You turn your heel, bring it back in. I move my head also to help shift my hips and my legs as well. Now, once I have a diagonal mount, all right, adjust your hips, make sure your hips are underneath their arm, grab, and as we've done, in other parts of the series, as we've gone for an arm bar facing down, well, you can do arm bar falling back. Okay, now, there's different arm bars in the game of jiu-jitsu, all right? Some require that your feet are locked, others that your feet are open and your knees are pinched. For the move that we're doing right now, I want to have my feet locked, I want to pinch my knees, but more importantly, I want to lean a little bit to the side. The big reason why is because I don't want Rudy to be able to sit up. I want to keep pressure towards his head. Now, I'm going to go for the arm. If I can attack the arm, finish the fight from here, very good. That's what I do. But if your opponent locks their hands together, this creates a bigger problem. You're going to have to unlock your feet. You're never going to get the arm from here. As you fight, you lean and you put pressure back here. But what I'm going to do, as I maintain weight with this leg, I bring this foot, putting my toes in. Okay, now my whole interest now is to let Rudy sit up. So I'm going to allow my top leg, my heavy leg that would normally hold his head down, I'm going to let it slip. And now Rudy will be able to sit up. As he sits up, my leg goes over the shoulder. I grab my shin, lock up the triangle. And there's the end. So we finish him with a triangle choke. This move is a mount to an armbar to a triangle. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going into is actually from a good position. We actually have a mount, and then we're going to do something that most people don't expect. We're going to take their back from there. So I have a mount on Ian, and what I want to point out, when you have a mount position, it's try to create confusion. Whenever you're in a good position, try to create confusion. It's very common for them to grab two hands on one arm, and before we get into it, they're going to try to push you that direction. So I'm creating an angle. I'm putting my weight a little bit low. My right foot is out. My head's more leaning this way. Once I'm comfortable here, I'm going to line up with Ian in a straight line, so that way he feels he has an opportunity to get a reversal here from trapping, a bridge and roll. Now once he does that, go ahead and do the bridge and roll. I come up, I'm on one foot, and I have my knee automatically behind Ian's back. Now it's important that you try to keep this elbow lined up in the middle. Don't let it get in the way, because what ends up happening is as they bridge, you're using your leg to push. You push, now the arm that's holding onto the collar, I sit back and I use that to pull. As I pull, I line my chest up with Ian's back. Sit up, get the over and under control, and now you have their back. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next sub is from the best position in my opinion. It's when you have someone's back. So we're going to go for the rear naked choke from here, or RNC, whatever you call it. Now, we'll just start off with just the move that everybody does, okay? You have your over and under. Your arm goes, you grab your bicep, put your hand. You can see people on TV doing this in movies from like 50 years ago. And that's the reason why it's pretty common to defend this move. So from here, whenever I have the control, the over and under control, most of the time people are going to start pulling your top arm. What they're going to do is they're going to grab two hands on one arm. Okay, so Ian's going to grab my wrist here, and he starts to pull away. Now, if it's an MMA, fight, the gloves are right here, so this is like a really good handle. Okay, so from here, the person straightens out the arm, and you'll most likely never get your arm back. It'll be stuck here. So what we're going to do is we're going to still choke our opponent, but their focus is completely on the arms. So I'm just going to grab my arm still, and instead of trying to use my arm to go back for the choke, I'm going to bring my leg up. I replace my arm with my leg. Now I grab my wrist, and my opponent can have my arm. That's not really the problem for him, for me anymore, him controlling my arm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze with my leg and my arm, and then start trying to pull my arm back once I'm making that pressure. I fall to the side. Now here's where the move finally is completed. After I've adjusted my hips, I lock a triangle up, and then I hip back. Now the choke is created. This is an SP triangle. The way you did a triangle choke from open guard, it's the same move, but you're in a reverse position. Squeeze, and that causes submission. Here's the move in real time. Okay, the next sub that we're going to go over, we're now going into moves that are more for no gi, or they can still be used with a gi, but definitely no gi material is needed. Now when you're attacking somebody, you got to go for stuff that's not the normal, not the most obvious, because people, they're getting more hip to defending. So we're going to do a move here from side control, and Freddie is going to be my assistant on this here. What I'm doing is I'm starting from side control, but I have a forklift, but I'm gonna actually adjust my body to an angle. So I don't wanna be in north-south position, I wanna be more diagonal. This hand now is gonna go underneath. I'm cupping the inside by Freddy's armpit here, and I'm gonna use this pressure, not because I'm trying to crank his neck, I don't wanna be mean, but I wanna persuade him to kind of move to the side a little bit. Now my next step, I'm actually using my chest and my stomach to push now my hips. What I want to do is I want to get this arm underneath a little bit. They're most likely going to be thinking that you're going for an arm attack or taking the back, but I'm going to actually switch, throw my leg over. This leg goes over. My hand that was underneath the arm, it now grabs my shin. I lean, put my legs in a figure 4, and go back to the SP triangle again. Finish the fight. Now here's the move in real time. All right, this next technique we're going into is escape to submission. One of the best moments for you to get a submission on your opponent is when you get out of a bad position they have you in, because they're still thinking about how they lost control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going into side control, and this particular side control we call it a forklift position. And the reason why is because Freddy has his arm underneath my leg, he has his other arm underneath my neck. Now the important part of this technique has to do with my elbow. My elbow needs to go against Freddy's belt line. Specifically not the forearm, the elbow. The elbow goes against the belt line. My outside arm is going to hook the neck. Now my first initial part of this move is to push. Now I want to push this direction because most cases your opponent, just out of natural movement, they're going to try to push you flat again. They think you want to go this way. So as Freddy pushes me flat, I use my elbow right here to push him over my hips. Now immediately once I get a top position, I put the elbow right on the sternum, then I step over and I take the arm. And this is the way you catch him off guard with an outside arm bar. So now here's the move in real time. All right, the next technique we're going into once again is an escape into a submission. And the side control that we're going from here is what we call second base. The reason why we call it this is because the person on top is on their side as if they slid into a base, stole a base like in baseball. So this side control poses a problem because when you're trying to recover your guard, their legs are away from your legs. They're blocking your ability to wrap your legs around them. So the first thing I'm going to do to get out of this position, I'm going to move my head a little bit this way. So that way I can sneak my elbow inside. Once again, my elbow wants to be inside against my opponent's hip. So I have my elbow against Freddy's hip. I'm going to pinch slightly on this side right here, but the most important thing is I start walking away. I walk my feet away. All right? Now once I've walked away to, a couple feet, my hand goes in front, I push on my opponent's head, and then immediately throw the leg over. The next step is to go for the Kimura. This is a move we talked about previously. Hand goes behind the back, lift, and there's your submission from your escape. Now here's the move in real time. The next technique we're going into, once again, is an escape into a submission, and we're going back to second base. So as you recall, the reason why we called this second base was because this side control position, your opponent is on their hip like they just stole a base in baseball. Now, what I'm doing from here, first step, my head I have to move to the side in order to get my elbow to go in against the hip. When my elbow goes in against the hip, that's when my escape begins. That's the most important part. Now I start to walk my feet away. As I walk my feet away, I'm pinching on this arm with my left arm. My outside arm is pinching. Now as I walked away, I created a void here where there's no base for Jill. So as I push on her head, she goes back. Now really quick, I want to go up on my feet and put my shin inside and fall back, throwing my leg over for the arm bar. This is how we finish him with the arm after we get out of the bad position we were in. The next move we're going into is a counter from a takedown attempt from your opponent. And what we're doing is not really just a move, it's kind of a series. So the thing we want to keep in mind is that whenever we escape a move that our opponent's trying to do, that oftentimes leaves a great opportunity for us to go for a submission. So from this case, Ian is actually, it could be a takedown or it could be him just grabbing my leg. Ian has my leg, all right? I'm sitting here trying to keep my balance. I'm grabbing the belt. I want to fall directly underneath him and use this for a standing sweep. So I'm here to fall, and he's now going to be on top of me. Now the next thing that happens here is I want to actually jump on top of him. My knee is already making pressure because it was making contact from the beginning. Keep the pressure. Once the arm loosens, reach underneath, outside arm bar again. There we are. Finish the fight with an outside arm bar. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next move we're going to do is an escape from a stand-up position. So it's not a submission that we're trying to get out of. It's when your opponent actually captures your leg. So in this case, Rudy has my outside leg. Now I'm going to spin us around here. Okay. Now, as we've done in other parts of the series, when your leg is in the middle, you can grab and roll and turn this into a standing sweep. Now another scenario is when your leg is on the outside. Now, when your leg is on the outside and your opponent won't let you put your foot in the middle, then you don't really have that as much of the ability to do a rolling sweep. So, my foot's on the outside, I'm going to take one step back. Now, your hand can support you just as your leg does. So, if you need to, use your hand to help keep your balance as you're hopping. Now, my next step, I'm going to put my hand on the mat, my leg goes behind, and then I trip them with my foot. This is a regular standing leg scissor. Now, once you have your opponent on the ground, once they fall, the legs oftentimes come up. Look for the opportunity to grab the toe. Reach over, turn it into a submission. This is a regular toe hold. Once they capture your leg, you turn it into a leg scissor, finish with an attack. Okay, the next move we're doing is an escape from once again when they grab your leg. So this is the stand-up part of the series here. So as Rudy goes and he grabs my leg, I want to try to get my leg free. I want to pull, donkey press my leg. My goal is to get my leg back, but sometimes it doesn't work. So if we're here and we're in a situation where I end up getting forced to the ground, what I want to do is I want to get my leg, my left leg specifically, and I want to put it on the outside. My leg needs to be on the outside of Rudy's right hip. So the next step, my left shoulder goes to the mat. So he's attacking my left side completely right now. I roll over my left shoulder. Now, as I roll over my left shoulder, I want to grab the elbow. This first thing I want to try to control is the elbow. I get to a sitting position, put my legs back to the side. That makes the pressure even tighter. This is how we turn their takedown attempt into a rolling omoplata. All right, the next move that we're doing is an option that you can go for attacking the leg when someone tries to put a De La Riva guard on you. So, got Sam here again. Now, I'm going to stand up, and Sam's going to go for De La Riva. I have my leg forward. He puts his leg inside here, and this, this is a bad guard because when they start to hook and they put pressure, they really compromise your knee. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to fall down or get tripped to the side. So I'm just going to drop my weight and I'm going to sit. So now I don't have the problem of worrying about landing wrong. So I'm sitting here and I have this leg now grapevine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab here on the leg. I'm going to adjust a little bit and I'm going to roll underneath. So this is more of an advanced move. It kind of plays around with your ability to roll. But it's actually simple what you're doing. You're grabbing and you're rolling underneath. The leg that I had hooked, that he started from a De La Riva, is now the leg that I get to attack with the triangle. I'm pulling as I push with my knee away, much like a 661. Now here's the move in real time. Okay, the next escape that we're going to do is from the armbar, one of the first moves that we're ever taught in jiu-jitsu. We're doing an armbar from the guard here. So Rudy's going to have his guard, and he's going to do this move a little slow so that way we kind of explain. The first thing that I want to point out is that whenever you are fighting out of an armbar, the first goal is to get our arm out of danger. But what you should realize is that whenever someone goes for your arms, they put both of their legs on one side of your body. So not only should we try to get out of an arm, but we should also try to turn it into a guard pass. Whenever both legs are on the same side of your body, then that compromises your opponent's ability to keep a guard around you. He's got his left and his right, or excuse me, his right and his left here. As he transitions over, pay attention. That's what we want to watch for. That's the opportunity for us to pass the guard. So first thing I'm going to do, okay? I want to make sure that I'm really focusing on the hips. As they move to the side, I'm going to bend my elbow in, okay? What I don't want to do is I don't want to keep my arm out this angle, or I don't want to be pushing, or I don't even want to be, pushing on the stomach that leaves my elbow out. Because what happens is, go ahead and do the arm, as Rudy goes for the arm, and my elbow is at an angle that way, when he throws a leg over, his hips line up with my arm, and that's what causes my arm to, to hyperextend. So have it on radar. As their hips move, go. Your elbow should move the opposite way. I'm pointing my elbow to the leg on the opposite, not the one going over to my head, but the one that's closer to the ground. Now, when Rudy throws his leg over, there we are. Good. Now, his legs are both on the left side of my head. So go ahead and do the extension for the arm. Your arm is meant to turn this way. It looks bad, but the bend of this is okay. It's not hyperextending. If you'll notice even the detail in my hand, my thumb is kind of pointed this direction, so I'm okay with this. What ends up happening is, when they throw the leg over, you put pressure forward to help prevent them from extending their body. Now that my pressure is forward, I'm gonna start moving to the side. As I move to the side, now that collapses Rudy's legs on top of each other. My hand goes down, or my hand pushes down on the leg. All right, keep the pressure. Now, if you need to, sometimes you can put your leg here as well. If the person's got a little bit more stronger hip, but be careful with your balance. The hand should be enough. So, put pressure here with the shoulder as well. Get your arm out, bring it behind the neck, and switch to side control for the pass. And this is how we escape the armbar and turn it into a guard pass opportunity. Okay, the next move we're going over is an armbar escape once again, but this time it's from when you're underneath somebody. So Rudy is going to get a mount position on me. And from here, okay, before we start the move, it's important to understand that when your opponent is attacking your arm, you have to already be ready and have the frame of mind to point your elbow towards your stomach, okay? Or towards the opposite leg. All right, so as soon as I see that Rudy's going for it, I'm already getting ready to tuck my elbow. Now, when he goes for the move, in addition to the armbar, now you'll know you have it correct when they extend their hips, it's not going to hurt your arm. So my elbow started off pointing at my stomach or Rudy's opposite side leg, but as he falls back and he applies a move, my elbow's basically pointed up towards the ceiling. So this is where we know we're in good shape. Now to complete the escape here, so that way you're not giving him time to readjust and dial your arm in a different direction. If he turns my arm the opposite way, then that's when I have the same problem. It's gonna hyperextend my arm again. So keep your elbow pointed up now. Now walk away, and this is where our escape becomes complete. As we walk away and get to our knees, now we drive the shoulder forward. Your shoulder goes into the leg, your arm goes behind the neck, and once again you escape to side control. This is how we escape the arm bar from a mount position and turn it into a guard pass. Okay, the next escape we're doing is when your opponent tries to do a triangle choke on you. So Ian is going to get a triangle choke on me right now, and there's an important detail that we want to understand, that when your arm, let me spin you around here, when your arm is across the body, that's not good. Or your arm is here, that's not good. Your opponent can adjust their hips and lock a triangle shape around you and cause pressure whether your arm is across or whether it's this way. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have my elbow lined up with Ian's stomach. Right in the middle where the belly button's at, that's where your elbow needs to line up. So as soon as the leg goes over the neck, my elbow goes right where the belly button's at. Okay? Now I'm going to put my thumb on the inside of the leg. Once we have this established, my left hand grabs my wrist, and I have a locking position. So if Ian tries to go for a triangle choke or complete it from here, it makes it really hard because as he squeezes and tries to pull in to adjust his legs, my elbow is going right into his stomach. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to pin his knee to the mat. So as I pin his knee to the mat, he can do all he wants to try to get a triangle choke. It just makes it very difficult to get any closer to me. So go ahead and try to lock the choke up. All right. I have a frame right here inside his triangle, and this is how we shut down a triangle choke. Okay, the next technique we're going into is once again an escape from the triangle choke. This time your opponent has a little bit more of the triangle choke locked in. It's when they have the triangle choke locked in, it's really hard to get out of the move when you stay on your knees. So we're going to try to rely on standing up to create gravity. Gravity is going to be our friend right now. So Ian, going to lock up the triangle choke. This one here. All right. So we're at the point where the leg is over the shoulder. Now, before we go into it, let's loosen up a little bit. I still want to try to keep my elbow in the middle as much as possible and my hand right here. Now, what oftentimes happens is your opponent is faster and they lock their leg in while you still have this movement going. So, when your opponent gets to this part of the move here, the triangle is about 80-90% done. Still try to keep your elbow in. Try to keep your elbow in the middle as much as possible. If you can adjust your thumb to go back in and cup the inside of the leg, all the better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze Ian's right leg. Now I put pressure forward. Now, one of the common ways of trying to, get out of a triangle choke is to stack your opponent with your legs in a tripod position. But the only problem is that it's a strength test. Your legs versus their legs, versus their whole body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop back and I want to turn my body at an angle. I have my right leg up, I have my left leg down. So the same side leg that's over your shoulder, that knee stays on the ground. I grab, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a little bit. And I want to put pressure forward again, and I want to pick my opponent up. Now, the knee that was on the ground, that knee is now going to push to the side. I'm going to push in, Ian's right side. Now, as I push and I start shaking, I poke my head out. Now, the way this works, from the beginning, when you had this block slowing down his ability to triangle choke you, what ends up happening is this knee and the fact that you're picking them up, it creates a slight window for your head to slip out from the inside of their legs. And this is how you get it out of a triangle choke. Okay, the next move we're going to be working on for escape is a Kimura. A Kimura is one of the most, it's Jiu-Jitsu 101, but it's also a move that will continue to always have its effectiveness at every belt level. So, Rudy, you get the joy of getting Kimura, or not getting Kimura for that matter. So, one of the ways people will go for a Kimura, there's different ones. But this technique, this escape, applies to all of them. As I hook the arm, I grab the wrist, grab my wrist, okay? My goal is to get Rudy's hand, his fist, to go behind his back. That's what causes pressure on the shoulder. The hand going behind the back and torquing. So when people are put in this situation, they try to grab their belt. They try to grab their wrist, lock their hands, move their legs. All those things are natural things and they're our first reaction. But what's more important is to break down the Kimura at the most simplest form. I simply want to put his hand behind his back. So what Rudy's going to do is he's going to, as I bring his arm up, he's going to make his back go further away. As he hips away, I can't put his wrist behind his back. So I'm going to try again. He does the same thing. And again. Every time I lift the arm up to make it go behind his back, Rudy puts his back or his hips a little bit further. Okay? Then if you can, get flat to your back. All right. Then you completely grab your arm, and that's how you defend from the Kimura. Okay, the next escape that we're going for is for the footlocks. So as you get higher up in belts, this becomes a common problem you have to deal with. So Rudy is going to try to break my ankle. So from here, what I'm doing is Rudy falls back from my leg. It's important to understand the problem that's being created here. So he has his knee that's up, and that makes it hard for me to get close to him. He also has his foot here, and he keeps it right at the hip line. So any further than that, of course, is a reap. All right, so the first thing that I need to do before Rudy goes back, I want to already be pointing my toes towards my head. That locks up my ankle joint, so that way it's harder for him. Whenever he's trying to push away and using all his deadlift muscles, all his, his back and his legs and everything, this is going to make it harder for him to get that full, extension on my ankle. Now, after I point my toes towards my head, I also want to grab the lapel, or if there's no gi, then I want to grab the neck if I can. That will also slow down the process of him going away from me. As Rudy's head goes back, it's important to understand the mechanics of the submission. As Rudy's head goes back, that's what creates a pressure on my ankle. So I want to hold here. Now, if his foot is pushing you away, switch grips. Use your elbow to bump his foot off of your hip, then switch your grip again. Now here's the important part. I got to get past this knee, and that'll be the final step. So my hand goes to the mat. I lean to this side already as much as I can, and I want to go out and then jump back in. So I go to the side, and then I jump past his knee. And when it's all said and done, you should end up not only just getting out of the footlock, but in a diagonal mount, an S mount, or a hurdle mount, whatever you refer to. You have an opportunity to attack, but most of all, you get to keep your ankle. And this is how we get out of a footlock. Okay, the next move we're going into is the guillotine and how to escape the guillotine. This is one of the moves that we get a lot of questions on how to get out of. It's in mixed martial arts, it's in jiu-jitsu. So here we go. For this demonstration, we have Ian and Rudy once again. And before we get started, it's important to understand, once again, the way this move actually works. So Ian's going to go ahead and apply the guillotine. Go to your back a little bit. Okay. Now, the whole point of this move is Ian wants to put his back down, causing Rudy's head to go down while his body's stabilized. Okay, so that's the important thing. We want to try to address that problem first. So go ahead and fall back, close your guard. Now, when Ian closes his guard, that makes it where Rudy cannot move his body at all. It puts all the pressure directly on his neck. So before it gets to this phase, the person who's getting guillotined needs to put his hips up high. Put your hips high. Once your hips are high, that automatically takes the pressure off of the choke. The next step, we're just going to roll forward. So as he rolls forward, now, just like you do a pull-up or a chin-up, you want to grab your opponent's arms, pull them away from your neck, and then immediately turn into them. Once you do, you should end up in a north-south position. And this is the way we get out of a guillotine choke. Okay, the next escape that we're doing is for what we call the omoplata, for those of you that might be new in jiu-jitsu. But I think everybody at this point, you should be playing pretty avidly. Okay, this is oftentimes done from the guard position. So Rudy's going to have me in a guard. And people like to tie this in with an arm bar. Okay, so whenever you escape the arm, this move is oftentimes right around the corner. So Rudy's going to get the angle here for the move. Okay, now right here. Okay, my arm ends up getting forced to point back, and Rudy sits up to attack my shoulder. Now, the first thing that I want to do right off the bat is I want to get my hip close to Rudy's hip. I'm going to put my right leg behind, and then I grab my thigh. So my right hand is grabbing the inside of my right leg. Now the next step is I'm going to pull back, and I want to basically trip Rudy over my leg. That gets me out of the omoplata. Finish the move by getting to your knees. Get a top position, and this is how you escape the omoplata. Okay, the next escape we're doing is for the rear naked choke. This is, man, one of the hardest moves to get out of most of the time, and it works for every level of jiu-jitsu and MMA. So Ian is going to go for a choke on Rudy. Alright, so we'll do this slow because with these escapes, again, we want to break down why they work, and we also want to pick them apart piece by piece. So what you want to do is you want to catch this move before your opponent completely locks it in. So let's loosen this up and already get the fingers inside, okay? All right, so the whole point of a rear naked choke is to squeeze your opponent's neck on both sides, putting pressure forward. Now, you're holding on by a thread at this point. Your hands are inside, you're pulling down. Now, Ian has both hooks in, which makes it really hard to move your body. So what Rudy's going to do is he's going to move his body to the side a little bit, and right about here, when he goes to the side, this knee, I want to point this knee down. This knee points down. Turn your heel up if necessary. And what you do is you get your leg to slip through. So Rudy's leg was originally on the outside, but because he fell to the side, he pointed his knee. Now he managed to get it through the middle. The next step is to get your knee to go all the way towards where your elbow is at. So this will put your hip in the air. So what ends up happening is you have your basically bottoms up, and you're one step closer of getting out of the back control with the choke. So now going to the next side, the way you pull, very similar to how you would pull down when you're doing a chin up again. Pull down at the wrist and also at the elbow. So you have one hand pulling down and one hand pulling out. Once you have this going, you create more space. Now you start walking a little bit more to the side until you get your neck free. Once your head is free, pop it up, get it out of danger, and get to a top position. This is how you get out of a rear naked choke with both hooks in. All right, the following move we're going to do here, this is one for the ladies. So oftentimes one of the complaints that we have with females whenever they're grappling is that they're overpowered by men. And one thing that we try to let people recognize is that men's legs and women's legs are equally strong for the most part. Maybe not squatting 400 pounds, but females realize that you have the ability to squeeze someone with your legs. And you also have the ability to keep someone in tight and try to manipulate the arms as well from what we call guard position. So for this move we have Jill and Jason. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie two basic moves in jiu-jitsu and put them together. And what ends up happening is you have a much higher success rate in making your opponent tap. So right off the bat, Jill's going to go for an arm setup here. So we'll explain what she's doing is she's using her left arm to extend Jason's right arm. Now the next thing she pulls off is she lets go of the grip and she does what we call a Kimura. Okay, so from here she's going for a shoulder lock. Most of the time when you have this position, it's putting a lot of pressure on your opponent's arm. Okay, it's very common for them to try to pull their arm in and bring their arm back in to relieve the pressure off of their shoulder. When Jason does that, Jill uses her left leg to go over his shoulder. And then she proceeds with what we call a triangle choke. A triangle choke works because you're using your legs to squeeze one side and you're using their arm to squeeze the other. As you pinch your legs together, that creates compression and forces your opponent to go to sleep. So This is one move for you. Ladies, have fun doing it. Be careful. Don't hurt any guys doing it.